As some of you may know me, I usually prefer to start all my presentations with a story of a single character. So meet my friend Slobodan. Slobodan is one of us, an aspiring Wardley Mapper. And Slobodan is a smart fellow. He goes and educates himself by reading and going on a lot of conferences. And recently he watched some of Grand Vizier's cat's many Wardley catting videos. He understood the idea and he'd like to learn more. He took time, he read the book, he practiced, he watched the course by Chris, I also watched the course by Ben, read a bit. It's been a few years. And he understood its value for business. He wanted to apply it in its own environment, in his own company, maybe with his friends and family, starting a new business, you know what. And then he showed it to others. But as we all know, this thing doesn't always comes welcome, with the old hands. So he's like, hey, look at these maps. And, some would basically, get bored, call him crazy. It's this crazy guy, Slobodan, and his map obsession. Not again. Are you going to map this as well? Again, you with your maps, or not interested, boring, and so forth. Mapping, what are these maps? People don't understand, and sometimes they don't value, the good intentions that Slobodan had. But Slobodan learned before. You can't just randomly shove maps into someone's head. But anyway, Slobodan gets a bit upset, as everyone will get upset. And additionally, he understood that you can't just grow together. You learn the topic, so what? And you would sometimes even get a response, maybe not directly. You think you're so smarter than us all just because you learn these maps. Because, even if you do, we all know what happens in a garden bush if a branch starts growing more than the rest, right? So Slobodan and like everybody else, people learn that we all need to grow together because accompanied growth, the growth of the community, spurs even more exchange, more innovation, and you grow better. So Slobodan decided to create a meetup and invited other crazy map people. They all started talking and growing. The group grew more and more and more. Yeah, a bunch of cat people, right? And they would meet. They would practice, learn, more practice, more applied practice, and share. And this cycle would repeat. But Slobodan realized that no matter how much they all practice as a meetup, even if we spent, for example, for a lot of time just practicing and trying to apply the decisions in some cases, we're still small, unexperienced, we're tiny. In most companies, we won't have a say. Designers, engineers, product managers, we're the little people. And it's not shameful to be small, but the context of us, the tiny people, is limited. As much as it's good to just practice mapping, how can we grow step beyond? How can we learn as much as the people that are learning in large scale, systems, in governments, companies, big tech? And Simon has shown a democratized strategy. Can we democratize? Sorry, I just jumped in over. Can we democratize gaining mapping experience? And so taking for an example, even if you practice and learn a lot as a small community mapper, your experience is limited compared to a company founder, executive, for example, which applies mapping. Different interactions, a much more rewarding setting, a different environment, other people who are also discussing strategy moves and so forth. And as you're learning, the gap doesn't remain. It grows. The question is, how can we grow more? How can we grow better? And some people will just bluntly tell you, the Amazon's famous quote, there is no compression algorithm for experience. But is that really the case? If you take a step back and try to think about it, who are Amazon competitors? IBM and Microsoft were much there longer than Amazon. If we all know that IBM started a long time ago, almost more than a century, and Microsoft almost 50 years ago. While Amazon started in 1994. They are here much longer than Amazon. If this statement, if this quote applied, wouldn't they be more successful than them? So there is a way there is a way. So Slobodan took a step and went back. So I went back, going back, and if you start to think about it, a standard experience cycle that an executive or some other, let's say, a regular person has, is you join the company, you get acquainted with the rules, start learning about the company environment, you start making decisions, making impactful strategy decisions, and you get feedback, you learn from others, from the market. Then you finish your work at the company and experience level completes, or then maybe you go to another company. And this whole process takes years. And while thinking about this, that you could notice the word cycle, which takes years. A cycle, an experienced feedback cycle, and it takes years in a proper setting. So could we somehow make the cycle smaller and faster to learn more in less time? Sounds like a fantasy, right? And we could also have a lot more settings and a lot more cycles. What if we could speed up all these cycles? And during one of these interactions and thinking about these strategy cycles, I've sometimes even discussed it with Simon, and he wrote an interesting and an amazing, I would say, tweet, that the speed of a cycle is important as well. So what if we could also, in these cycles, experience the feeling of learning in a team, like in reality we do, all well pitted against different teams. Some of them may be daft, maybe a bit blunt, they don't know Wardley Maps, while others are more familiar. How would your approach change? I mean, how would our approach as a community or as a team, engaged in a team, change when faced against, let's say, a company or a team that knows what it's doing? And what are the challenges there? And all while, how could we, inducing these small cycles, how could we remove the gap and reach the goal of helping the community, basically gain more experience? So while thinking about that and about removing the gap and speeding the cycles, you can also look at the ancient history about also Sun Tzu, ancient generals, even Vegetius on training troops, with the approaches, how could they defeat all the other, for example, how could the Romans defeat all the other civilizations surrounding them at the time, all compared towards the recent history, modern history, like WoW, World of Warcraft, Battlegrounds, people understanding how to actually use strategy in that cycle. And also at the end, reading about command post exercises, typically focused on this battle readiness of staffs, military nowadays, you realize they still use military exercises. And, these events, they come sometimes running parallel as standalone events for headquarters, as you can read here, but with an emphasis on these simulated events. But as you can see in all of this, basically, you just want your community, you want your people to be more ready. And you're not the first people, and we're not the first people actually to think about this in this way. So while thinking and going through all of this, we came upon the thing called BattleCamp. And this is the topic of this lecture, like basically how we came and what BattleCamp is, which is basically this whole process of this presentation. So to put it simply, BattleCamp is a simulated team-based mapping competition in a single market. And it's, as you can see, the main goal is to just, learn and practice a complete Wardley map cycle faster. And also make it open source and share it, spread it through every possible community. And what is this BattleCamp? So let's say you kind of grab that it's a team-based mapping competition and so forth. How does this BattleCamp work? So this is the general structure. Multiple teams. Turn-based, simultaneous turns, maximum 40 rounds, 5 minutes per round. Constant map reevaluation. So when we say a map, we mean a Wardley map. So with limited resources. By the way, I will also like to make a shout out to my dear friends who also assisted with formulating some of the rule sets, assisted with the balancing. They're both named Aleksandar Simovic. So yeah, it's a funny, and they're good friends. It's a funny case, I know. And then, okay, let's say, you see the general structure. What is the team structure? So you have random, it's a random team. So you can't preset the team. It's a random team of people who want to attend the BattleCamp, of 3 or more members. usually an identical number of members, where each team represents one company, a market player. And each team has a map of their own company's landscape, and if they want, or of other teams, and their their company. In a single turn, a single team can make one, even none, or even many decisions during it. And they're all focused on a single market, basically, to put it simply, focusing on a single product serving a single or more user needs. And okay, you get the team structure, you get the general settings, but what are the metrics? So these are the metrics, or basically the resources. Time points per team member. Each team starts with 10 points, but it's very important to clarify that each team member actually contributes to these team points. And I will later say on, but it's important to say it even now, you can even steal team members, as companies steal company members to increase the number of team points or time points for each of your turns. There's also a resource of capital. There is also liquid, so non-liquid and non-liquid capital. Liquid is basically represented in cash, but you can also, the non-liquid is in some properties, because, for example, maybe your company, like in the case for the Map Meetup Belgrade, you have, let's say your company, your team owns a building, and maybe you want to dispose of this building. You can gain more capital by even assessing or selling or disposing some of your components. Also, another metric is market share. It's at the moment it's in percentage, but it's also very important to realize that each scenarios, I'll talk about it later, can have different market shares. Some can be completely filled. Some can be, as you know, in Simon's piece War and Wonder, some can be completely, very little, very small markets. That can be like a bit large with a lot of competitors, with a big fight and so forth. And at the same time, it's very important that judges keep track of moves and company resources, just to make things fair. Okay, now you get some other things about the workshop. Let's talk about the scenario. So in general, the judges and organizers can pick a scenario. Sorry if I may be talking too fast. Now I just realized that when I looked at the time. The scenarios can come from a different types. Public sector ones, where metrics differ than, for example, commercial ones. And it can be also custom scenarios. You can also pick, for example, let's say we're talking about public sector scenarios. You can also pick scenarios that can really help your community. I think these, multiple teams competing against each other using mapping to fix a specific community point or a community issue in a, for example, in an environment or in a certain, let's say, country, nation, or in the world. Additionally, each team has a different starting point, and it's usually one turn represents one financial quarter, just to clarify that. Okay, this is basically, in our case, we did a flu vaccination kind of scenario, and we also wrote a single public scenario. It's also publicly available with different metrics on the public sector for homelessness. So you can find some of these scenarios, and if you want, you can even contribute, because, as you know, BattleCamp is open source. Anyway. Gameplay. So there are over 50 moves kind of available, which we've kind of analyzed and balanced and so forth. Some are available as like cards, like deck cards, which you can put in, print them out, generate them from yourself, and just to remind yourself which moves exist or not, if you have like team members which are not that aware. During gameplay, you will also notice a lot of this. And in this 5-minute turn that I mentioned, it's a very tiring, because in a 5-minute turn, you as a team take a look at your map that you usually put on a huge piece of paper, and you're constantly changing it and moving it, where you need to get the news from the market, usually delivered by judges. You need to reevaluate the map now. So each time you make a move, you wait for the judges to tell you like what's happened on the market and so forth. And based on that, and based on your moves, you need to reevaluate your map, to see where are the components. Then You need to also analyze the competitor moves, if you have time, if you're fast enough, and make a group decision. And as you can see, this takes a lot, right? And not to mention that the judges can introduce random events. So for example, let's say, even though this is a very troublesome event, like nobody expected this random event of COVID-19 appearing. So events such as this one, or a crash, for example, a certain market, are important when doing mapping, because they can completely change the whole environment. And the next thing is, with a map, you need to have capital flows. So you don't have a fixed number of capital, your capital changes per each round. So in a very standard setting, as a very easy kind of setting, we set up that it's for example, a BattleCamp workshop can have a market size of, let's say, 100,000 sold per quarter products. The market can grow or retract, and each round you receive a certain income revenue, where you have a market size, where you calculate like the general market size, which your company, which is the general market size, then your company, then market share, then the times the product price, minus the cost, of course, and the product price and the cost are based on the capital flow of your map. So the product price, you can set it up manually, you can change it even during the setting. You can make a move and say, I want to change the product price and I want to make it lower and I want to lose money on it, because at some point you want to maybe you want to do one of those, what Simon mentioned, is evil, wicked moves against your competitors. But it's very recommended, and it's important while doing your mapping to also you do your capital flows, because you can then see which of these components are actually impacting the price the most. So as you can see, there's a lot. And most of you might be asking right now, how does this look in practice? So I will give you now an example from our own first BattleCamp. So we did it in the 10th of March, 2019, like last year. There were 2 teams. Yeah, we just Mark made a joke. We can go for 0.5 speed to watch it again. Sorry, I know. I need to slow down. But anyway, so there were 2 teams. One had 4 players, the other had 5 players. The 5th player was a person that wanted to learn, which didn't know, but they just wanted to watch and maybe assist sometimes. And where it was a private healthcare market, like with, again, flu vaccinations, people were selling flu shots and treatments with flu shots. I don't like, private healthcare. I'm from Serbia, so we have public healthcare, but still we have private companies and so forth. So anyway, we wanted to, in a sense, also kind of, discuss about this, kind of what could happen in a private healthcare market if we can somehow lost this. Anyway, we had 5 judges. Chris also came, Chris Daniel. There were 5 judges. One of us was actually writing down what was the financial income for each team, because teams have never experienced actually making important and impactful decisions for the whole team all together in 5 minutes with a map. So that was like super hard for everyone. And the situation was, we had a new entrant, a small startup with little to no bias, versus a traditional health clinic with over 70 years on the market. And things went for I think around 5 hours. So yeah, it's a long one. We had around 20 turns at most, if I recall correctly, because sometimes we would give them more time to actually make a decision, because people got really scared and they were like, okay, what do I need to do? And it really made a lot of impact on them. So I'm gonna share, and you can tell me if the videos make sense. I will put them. Tell us your move and what do you think about it?
We started as an old established company. So we thought we started at a disadvantage based to the other team. So we wanted to make things a bit harder to them at one point, and to stop leaving market share because we had price that was not competitive enough. So we tried first few technical steps. First, to stop going down with market share. And second, to make them to make their progress a bit harder. So we tried first, maybe a third smooth fork or something. We inquired him what were your steps, what reasoning, and we tried to place fake price, so that we didn't use. So we gave you fake information what our price was.
You can see
how to react, maybe to drop your price and then have slower progress and less money because you had better margins than us. And if you have less money, then you can progress slower without it. So we start with that. And
anyway, I won't be, you know, I mean, I'm gonna compile the video and make it public. I won't do that for in the past few months, but anyway, things were a bit hectic. And here's another team. They had a better advantage. The previous one was the traditional one, so I will share some of the experiences later on. But
team number two. Team number two, yes.
Yeah, maybe we should have a better name, but we're team number two. So yeah, we started from the market map, and we adjusted it to our example. So we had our custom map.
5 minutes.
From the start, we were thinking like where we should improve our components. So one idea was to move app to be a product, and the other one was to get no analysis to the laboratory equipment. I think to move that to the commodity, or as it turned out at the end, that maybe the best option would be to move the component that would actually have the benefit of being reduced cost would be the highest. So we started like thinking how we can move it after.
Anyway, just to like jump in, I don't want to like bore you, like, you know, I'm gonna compile the video and I'm gonna give you, but as you can see, some of them, for example, many of them are simple engineers. They never had any time or chance to be part of a team that's making decisions of how much would the product cost. I mean, none of them had the chance of making decisions like how would they attack another company. They hadn't had the opportunity to have that. They had a huge gap in their understanding. Like they all understood Wardley Maps, but they just didn't, you know, they didn't have this opportunity to actually make a decision, change some environment, change a company, even if it's a fake company, even if the moves can be, you know, kind of childish, I would say. Like, you know, some of the moves were a bit childish by saying, you know, if you do this move like in a certain number of rounds, because, you know, some moves take 5 rounds, because it may be, you know, to innovate something, improve something, it takes a lot of time. You don't do it over 1 quarter, you do it on a serious amount of time. So they actually understood what was the cost, and even you know, they were even like making decisions like should they make small decisions on a 1-turn basis, 1 quarter basis, or should they make a longer strategy on that. So basically, even though some of those moves, I know they really are like childish, I would really say it like that. It really impacted them a lot to understand that, for example, they can make an impact even in the work they're doing. And for example, none of them understood like what a traditional clinic had as number of components. So they had to read about it, understand, see where are the components of a health clinic, like are there commodity, are there custom built, for example. What if a health clinic has their own custom built like laboratory equipment? What if they use what if they outsource laboratory equipment from another laboratory, and how much do they pay, and so forth and so forth. And they really understood like the points of like how does each of these, how does choosing one component, how does making one decision impact the whole value chain from top to bottom. And not only that, but how does it impact their income and also the winning of a team. And also at the same time, if they make a wrong decision, other team members are gonna like fail as well together. So yeah, as you can see now on the screen, I maybe jumped. Realized was that, you know, just as you can see, you know, these doing gameplays without actually trying to analyze their map and implementing doctrine, like understanding how they communicate, and also doing some moves like, you know, some of those, of course, cards are like, you know, do some doctrine level 1, you know, where as you know from the Steve Perkis's change to, you know, orientation of the doctrine table. Well, you know, depending on each level, you know, they would unlock, let's say, a certain reduction in cost. So they would understand that, for example, even though they could make a gameplay move without actually optimizing the internal mechanics of their company, the moves would cost less, would cost more, and it would take a lot more. And even some of those gameplays, we told them they had a risk of failing. So for example, even in a real company, if you're trying to do some magical gameplay without actually optimizing your company, it may fail because some other board members might just say, "Hey, you're destroying our stock price, stock value." Anyway, one of the more important things is, I mean, we didn't actually, nobody told them to do it, but they literally started behaving like the case of Amazon and Oracle. The startup literally started cannibalizing themselves by like seeing which things they need on how could they kind of disrupt this whole flu vaccination kind of market and so forth like that. I mean, they were thinking about some even abnormal terms like how could they commoditize doctors. I mean, as you could see here in the video, it was a bit irrational, but at the same time they were thinking like, because none of the moves they were making, we all ensured that you could not say, "I'm going to make this move." It doesn't make sense, then it's just a game. But you need to make a reasonable description of what are you trying to do. And if it makes sense, then you're allowed to make certain gameplay move. If it doesn't make sense, you can't just say, "Well, I'm gonna commoditize this," and it's done. So anyway, to come back to these results, this traditional clinic, for example, they were literally trying to behave like Oracle. I'm sorry if there's somebody from Oracle, but in the early serverless Oracle days, let's say it like that, where there was a lot of like deceit. Some people were like, they were literally taking their price. They were sending like newspaper articles like about how this, how this new startup is actually, is actually changing. That you need to have tradition. They were making advertisements. Like they really tried to do everything they can to slow down the startup, to slow down the company that was trying to reach out into their market share. And it was really interesting. Anyway, reaching consensus for them was also not trivial. So they really tried out to make good decisions. But some members, they were like, I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, there were some were even like generally scared. Like, were like, I don't know what should we do. I have no idea. And so some more experience took over. But anyway, it was really interesting to see how they made different propositions to each other and listen to them. Because as a judge or some watcher, as a let's say attendees, you can jump into the room and listen to how the team is working, what are they thinking about, what should they do, without actually making any suggestions. But it was pretty good. It was a generally satisfied audience. And yes, as Mark mentioned, like they mapped the competitors. So most of them actually, what they did was they had a map. I will explain which mode, because BattleCamp has different modes. Most of them, they actually wrote with a different color, where is the competitor? So they would say, oh, so they, for example, like the startup, they knew that the traditional health clinic had a property. They had a huge building which their company founders built. That's in the description of their context, of the team context. And they knew they had some, they had to probably pay more for taking, for basically, paying taxes and so forth. It takes a lot of time, a lot of electricity and so forth. I mean, things, costs accumulate. So they were like, understanding where is this piece of these components, of their components. I mean, where are the nurses, where is the laboratory equipment, where are the shots by themselves, how do they produce them? Then they realized that actually, they actually mapped the user needs and so forth. It was really a great experience, and most of them actually made an initiative to make even more better. We were actually doing also more meetups, because there were, again, on a map meetup, new members try to attend each meetup. So some of you might be asking, like, who won? Well, the winning conditions were that, the condition was, as you can see, like 60% of the marketplace, but no one won because nobody kind of reached that kind of market share. The traditional clinic had a larger than the other ones, but for example, the startup innovated so much that in the first 20 turns, they couldn't kind of yield this more income. They actually did innovate some of their components, as you probably saw Simon's case with I think the server racks. So they had a similar kind of problem, both companies. And the startup actually decided to drop down literally what they had, like what was custom built, and just adopt something new. And they just failed to yield more income, but they had they had less product cost and more income appearing, even though the traditional clinic team tried to manipulate the market and through deceit and false news and so forth. And yeah, basically this was kind of, we even got some emails that people were literally said we want more. And yeah, as I mentioned, this is open source. So, by the way, let me just go back one more slide. Yeah. So if some of you want to find it, I know Mark shared the link, but this is why I want to jump over this one, but you can find it on this URL. So some of you might ask, how can we organize one? So yeah, prerequisites. So in general, since BattleCamp is basically making a lot of decisions and doing a literally instant analysis of where you are, what you need to do, what change in your cost, convene with your team, it requires that to play, you just read the book, literally do what Simon wrote in his pinned tweet. Basically, read the free book, create several maps yourself, practice and read through all the climactic patterns. Go through the course, for example. That's but completely. I even wrote on the GitHub repo, completely do the whole course, create this course, and then just you can play BattleCamp. The reasoning is, as you know, if you're not aware of the doctrine, if you're not aware of what are the possible moves, what you can do, or what is a capital flow and how do you calculate it and so forth, it's the time pressure will literally, your team, as maybe some of you have played WoW, and when a team member fails to do their job in a team, other people get upset. They're like, why? Unless you're saying, well, I don't know how to do it, can someone show me? Anyway, to organize, well, I just put these are all not hard requirements. This is just something which I through the map meetup, through the BattleCamp, I realized that maybe at least 2 or maybe 1 BattleCamp would be enough, that you can organize one yourself, just to get acquainted with the rules, to understand, as a judge, what you need to do, because, for example, what if there are multiple teams with different levels? You need to go through every team. Then also you need to have a space, at least 2 separate rooms, or you can do it online. Provide food, refreshments, and coffee, because this is not a single-hour workshop. It takes several hours. I'm not joking. I planned that it was 4.5 hours, but it took 5 hours, almost 6. Anyway, and the reasoning is, as I said, many tricks. Anyway, it's open and free. Anybody can make them yourself. If you want to make it yourself, you can charge. If you want to make it privately, for some people, that you can charge for your time. Nobody's gonna you can improve it. And anyway, so some people might have asked, well, this is a bit hard. Can this be a bit easier? And so there are different modes. So because as things went on, people that were beginners on the BattleCamp, they were saying, well, it was a bit hard. We learned a lot, but is there a way we could get acquainted with the gameplay news without just reading them? And I know, we all are. I'm speaking for myself. I'm also lazy, so yeah. Anyway, so there are different modes. I literally wrote the first one, baby mode, because there is literally nothing there. You just have gameplay, and you kind of, you say, hey, you gained 2% of the market share, blah, blah, blah. It's very simple, but you start to understand what is the effect of doctrine on your gameplay moves, climactic patterns, how things are evolving, random events, that also the market can innovate. For example, if both teams do nothing, the market itself will evolve, as Simon said. So there is. I could remove this elastic product price, but in general, the product price is elastic. You get the initial map of your context in standard mode. This is what we gave to those 2 teams. In the real mode, which is the foundation mode, Okay, we can call it foundation mode if you say, Mark. Real mode. So everything applies, but the thing is, okay, I think my video maybe dropped for a second. I'm not sure, but I didn't see it on my other screen. Anyway, so do you hear me? I guess you do. So yeah, it should be fine. The technology, oh, sounds okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Rudiger. So in the real mode, you need to create your own map. So you only get your description. So your team gets their own description. Okay, your team gets just a description. You don't get the map, and you're supposed to create a map based on the description, and basically, the rest remains the same. And there's a fourth one called all-in-one, which is something we actually evolved as we tried, thinking as we thought about BattleCamp and how we could apply it and help the community grow even more. There are certain Meetup members which are starting their own companies, and we wanted to allow them to actually pit themselves, their ideas, against all of us. So they come. We can all sign an NDA if required, and the rest of teams, like so 2 or 3 teams, they think of ways how could they react and how could they attack, like literally finding the weaknesses inside the single company. So your goal in this BattleCamp is to destroy one company, but not really evilly destroy. I mean in a sense, try to discover the weaknesses in a company and to help your own community member actually be more defensive, be more, actually understand what are the potential plays that can appear for your own company. So basically helping each other by using this creative destruction as a QA, for example, would do. And there's another one. This is why BattleCamp said that it can be played by robots as well. Well, maybe with GPT-3, or some new future AI agent, where a human team would play against a simulated environment where certain, an AI or, for example, just a simulated team would literally play, for example, some best moves, like, for example, like you would play chess. And you would play against this artificial team, simulated team, and try to make the moves and even potentially try to beat them in their own game. Anyway, some of you might say, so this is what I heard, reality is a lot more complex, and that's true. But as you can see, as we all know, these exercises are used in the military. My good friend Andrew, some of you may know him, Andrew Schaefer. Well, he literally told me, in reality, there's a lot more emotion. If you use a BattleCamp in a simulated environment, it's that's good. You learn a lot, but in reality, when there's money at stake, where your life is at stake, where things get a bit, they're different. The environment is different. The pressure is the pressure is quite more quite bigger. So during the past, also year with the Map Meetup, as particularly because some Map Meetup members, including also myself, we all thought about how could we also apply mapping even more, so and improve BattleCamp itself, and also kind of use BattleCamp as the next step towards mapping products. So in the Map Meetup Belgrade, as a next step with BattleCamps, we introduced 2 things. First thing is 20-minute mapping sessions, literally something like pair sessions, where we would, for example, what we did was for several months we would all meet in a coffee shop before the COVID-19 crisis. We would meet up in a coffee shop, and then we would pick a random product, one of the top products from Product Hunt, Crunchbase, AngelList, Indie Hackers. We would map out the customer needs, customer activities in a very limited time frame, 20-30 minutes max. Now, some of you may say, well, okay, why would you just do it in 20-30 minutes max? Well, the point is in practicing where are we slow? For example, when you do it in 20 minutes, you immediately come to a point like, okay, where should I start? And when you start, you're like, okay, what's the next step? Maybe you're going to be slow in understanding what the customer needs. So you need to read, you need to analyze. I know that you can't do a full analysis, but you can do analysis of what did this product identify. And maybe you can actually put a single product, maybe these components, what are the components they're talking about in their landing page and so forth. So it was one of the things which we wanted to use, but actually a much more harder program came like literally last month called Product Mapping Month in 3 or 4 weeks, where actually we wanted to, in a way, as a team, as a community, help each other fight this fear of mapping and doing this kind of BattleCamp and everything by all agreeing on a single agreement, by all doing something and publishing it out in the wild. In 4 weeks, so each week we do one of those points where you analyze some industry moves, analyzing several industry products, and you then pick a certain SPA product. So 1 week for analyzing the industry moves and analysis of that and so forth. I don't want to go into the details because everybody's like employed, otherwise it take a lot less. So again, it's a very limited time frame. You have 4 weeks and you need to publish it a landing page and on relevant to publish it in public. So on relevant industry channels. If you're building something for let's say the machine learning, the machine engineering department, you can't just publish it on like Product Hunt. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But actually you need to discover what are the communication channels that these companies have and so forth. And BattleCamp has actually helped those people understand what could they do next with this product mapping month. And maybe in the future, we'll be doing this BattleCamp together with the product mapping where we would actually use specific settings from specific companies and products from out in reality, and together, actually create this environment where people would simulate other players on the market, real players on the market. And again, we're finishing. It's always important to say this, like these BattleCamp and the BattleCamp gameplay cards are guides for gameplay and should be only viewed as such. So please don't think that if for example, you're playing BattleCamp and you're saying you win and your team is learning a lot and so forth, don't think that if you do the same thing, you're going to be doing that in reality. So you're not going to gain 2% share if you just spend 10 minutes waiting with the team. So with that, members really loved it. And I hope that in the future we'll be able to organize more battle camps throughout the world. Also with Mark. Thank you. So now you can ask any questions. Let me read the question. So so Mark is asking about real mode practitioner, all-in-one expert mode. Yes. I think we could put each of these settings for a different kind of level. So, for example, if somebody wants to just understand what is the effect of something, you could put it in a specific course, for example, for certification, and you could say, like, basically, you now understood what is the effect of a certain gameplay, and what it happened. For example, you could put specific examples for the history and just put like a similar example as an exercise or case. And I know Mark is saying this could be a platform. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for all the compliments. I hope you guys like the presentation. So by a large margin, oh, thank you. No, I'm not. So the cards are just helping tools. So these are, it's a game. So, like, for example, it's just to help you visualize that there are all these plays and you don't lose them from your focus. The rest is you need to make a decision. You need to really understand what's going to happen, and also you need to do an orchestration of plays. So you need to do an orchestration of, like, I'm gonna actually put a fake news out in the market, or I'm gonna innovate in this, and I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna listen to I'm gonna try to talk understand what the customer needs. You know, I mean, this is still too simplistic, and some of you may, you know, may say that. I totally get this point, and it may be, but the point is to get small people, break the gap, gain experience, and not be afraid of doing something out loud. And John asked, how many times have you played BattleCamp? What you learned through playing? So, well, we organized. We did it. I could say we did it one time, which was public, external, and a couple of times kind of internal, where we didn't kind of publish outside. Well, we did the BattleCamp. We did several times together as teams where we together sat down and analyzed what like in a let's say over a couple of hours, lunch, coffee, and so forth. You sit down with your team and you basically predict, kind of pit against each other and predict what could be the next move for a specific industry. I've done that with my friend Slobodan, which I mentioned in the. He's actually a real person. Can you imagine? So we've done a lot of things together with other people, and there are people, for example, who had ideas which companies they wanted to make with products, and we would just like sit in front of them and ask them what are you gonna do, and we literally told them, what if we do this? And then the person answers, and we go through the whole scenario together and say, how much time do you need? And you know, we go forth along that way. And what is there something else I could answer? Yes, thank you, Peter, for a question. I don't want to take your time because I think there's another session gone. We captured some of the gameplays. We even took photos of what people made. We even have, I think, a paper somewhere where it was like a huge paper where we wrote all the moves and what were the financial implications of each of those moves. How did the company go and how did the market share change, and did the other, because there are also other companies on the same market. Again, it depends if this market is in the war phase. It's a commodity market, you have to fight a lot, or maybe it's not, maybe it's a product, maybe it's a custom built. I mean, it really depends on the context. You can create your own scenarios. So yeah, anyway, the point is helping small people understand. I mean, if there's anything you could take away from this presentation is we all need to evolve as time goes and understand and learn how can we small people make the big decisions and learn them without actually having to go to 30 or 40 years of learning, hey, I shouldn't have done this move, I should have done something else. Or in a situation where you will learn these simulations, and when you come into reality, maybe you will play this move and understand, oh, this is exactly what I should have done, and so forth. Maybe in reality, the things will be completely different. We don't know. I mean, some of us have applied these moves, but yeah, again, some of them I'm not allowed to say, but sorry about it. Anyway, I hope you all liked it. I'm gonna, just a second, I'm gonna stop sharing. Anyway, feel free to send me any messages. I'll write down my email here, and feel free to, ping and so forth. I hope nobody got offended or anything. And yeah, anyway, thank you all. Yeah. See you guys. Bye-bye.